She's giving you a hard time.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, I
That was
can.
good.
Perfect.
Alright,
And Mr. Brooks
alright.
as well.
Yes.
Welcome to the Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 Facilities Committee meeting of the Radnor Township School District. Are there any introductions and administrative remarks?
I have none.
What'd you say?
I have none.
Alright, alright. Is there any public comment? Public comment? Member of the public? Not tonight?
I'll hold off.
Fantastic. Approval of the minutes. Did everybody actually read them?
Yep.
I did, all 3 pages. Very nicely done. And let's move on to the first agenda item, Sulpizio Gym.
Sure, so let me just give you an update where we are with Sulpizio Gym. As you know, there was a flood last October, November.
August.
August.
August 13th.
Thank you.
Yep.
August
They
13th.
kept living in for me.
Remember like it was yesterday.
Yes.
Took a car.
And a gym floor. So they went ahead and replaced the gym floor itself, but did not replace the subfloor. The insurance company paid for that. The township has some concerns over some pitting of the finish on the floor. We met with the insurance company as well as the folks from Miller Flooring who installed the floor. Went through.
No relation to me.
No relation to you, okay. Through that course of that conversation, the township had some concerns over the floor, whether or not there was moisture underneath the floor, and a smell that was emanating from the floor. We went through and did a couple of things. Previous to that meeting, Miller Flooring had installed a blower system to blow air underneath the existing gym floor, and that air vacated back into the building. So anything that was underneath that floor since the 1930s when that was installed, you're beginning to smell. And there was a tar, petroleum type smell, because that's not uncommon back then. They used to use tar as a sealant. By turning that fan off, we didn't have that smell any longer because it's no longer coming out through the vent type of thing. We went ahead and had 15 different locations identified randomly on the gym floor, and we took, for a period of about 8 weeks, samples twice a week on Monday to Thursday morning. We took the subfloor moisture content percentage as well as the finished floor, the top floor, the maple floor finished content. The township wanted to have some additional testing done that we agreed to, and that was to determine whether or not there was moisture coming up through the concrete. We contracted a third-party independent agency to come in. They picked, again, about 14 different locations randomly in the gym, cut open the gym floor, drilled a hole approximately 4 inches deep into the concrete, placed a sensor, and they, for a period of 1 week, went ahead and took samples of what the moisture contents were. Those samples have come back. We have shared all this data with the township. We're waiting to get with the township to figure out what our next steps are moving forward. So I just want to bring up to speed as where we are now. There's a issue with the window outside, closest to Luella Avenue, that we're going to caulk ourselves so that we don't have water infiltration coming in when the wind blows from the east to the west, hitting that window, and it migrates in and hits part of that floor. So we'll go ahead and take care of that with our in-house forces. We have a bucket truck, so we'll be able to take care of that relatively inexpensively.
Yeah, is that everything?
That's everything.
Alright. Moving on.
Okay, high school facilities project update. As you know, at the last facilities meeting, we made a presentation about what we found from the feasibility study, and we are in the process of interviewing architects to then go before the original committee that was formed. Let them interview them as well to determine which architect we should consider contracting with to build a more definitive bid specification. So what you had was a kind of a shot in the dark with, okay, here's everything. We need to drill that down even further. We're currently we already took a test of the depth of the pool foundation. We've determined that to be at least 9 feet deep. We're still waiting to determine the outside retaining wall by the bleachers, although some data has emerged indicating that that might be at least to ground level for the football field, although we're waiting to confirm that, which is good news. We were concerned that that retaining wall might cave away. So that's good news, we think. We continue to work to get that information. At some point, we'll have that committee make a recommendation on an architect that we would like to engage, have a designated set price not to exceed, and then refine and come together with a more definitive project scope, and then ultimately, if the board decides, put it out for a bid, and then start that process.
What's your timeline for this?
We were a little delayed with the next item on the thing with bus thing, so I'm hoping to be able to get the committee together, hopefully maybe the third week of June, to start interviewing a couple of the prospective candidates for architects.
We talked last month about having opportunities for board members to tour the high school facility, and to take a look at, kind of all of the various aspects of the infrastructure, some of this isn't just facilities, it really is. I mean, Sarah used the word infrastructure. We are really talking about an infrastructure improvement when you're talking about walls and ramps and, things like that. There's amenities, but there's infrastructure here. But we were gonna have an opportunity to tour. Do we know what we're thinking about that?
Evidently, I did not hit the send button before coming down here tonight, so it's probably up in my drafts, so we'll be getting something with a series of dates for next week that if between morning and afternoon and perhaps evening, if you folks could pick one or a couple, and if not, certainly let me know if the time is convenient for you, and I'll try to avail myself to come out and give you that tour.
Does it make sense to try and do that while school's still in session? Is that why you were trying to do it next week, or, I'm just thinking in terms of people's.
School's done.
Well, school's done on the 12th, graduation's the 12th, right? So,
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Is
underclassmen
school,
will
they
still
go to
be
school after graduation these days, it's crazy.
imagine that.
Really? Well, you and I graduated like after school was out. That's cool.
So we could do it, just trying to get it sooner than later.
No,
because
I
of
appreciate
summer
that.
vacations.
Mhm.
We certainly could do it later in the week if we wanted to, or later in the month.
Okay.
Again, I'm at your disposal as to how you all would like to handle that.
Do you have coveralls and boots to go behind the bleacher?
All right?
Do you have coveralls and boots to go behind the bleacher between the two?
If you'd like, I'm sure I'll get you something.
Jeff wants to do that.
In your
He's dead
size.
serious.
Can I just following up on Mike's timeline question?
Sure.
So if you can get that group together by June, does it make sense for us to have a July facilities committee meeting so we can keep this on track?
I've been kind of pushing for one.
We certainly could.
I'm around.
We
I don't know if
certainly
Susan is. I know Mike and I will send you here.
Last week in July, I'm not, I might not be around, no.
I mean, we can figure it out later, but I'm just
We can
thinking in
figure it
terms
out.
of staying on schedule.
Sure. Yeah, I would like to get this going.
Okay. We certainly could do that. I think there's one week where I schedule a vacation, but, imagine that.
Let's just say you just got here. You didn't-
No, haven't you been here like 2 or 3 years now?
Yeah, I've been here for how many days?
After this week, it seems that way.
Yeah, okay, so now the last.
Moving on to
So,
the next
As you might have.
fire you've been putting out.
Yes. As you might be aware, we had a minor fire, well, actually not minor, but a fire at our transportation center. Fortunately, nobody was injured. But I wanted to go through and just share with the board some of the pictures of, and explain some of the things that took place. So this again is the exterior of the building. You see the office side where obviously the windows are. The fire was behind that office area. The garage doors to the left-hand photo, you can tell the bottom part is white. That's what the doors are supposed to look like. The rest of the doors are soot covered because they actually were up at the time of the fire. Smoke was pouring out when we arrived. Again, the office area entrance to the left, and then a closer shot of the garage doors. And again, we didn't buy two-tone doors. We'll have to clean those up, and I'm sure we'll come back next week. You can see smoke damage came out. This is through the soffit over top by the office area where the fire was back behind the office in an electrical room. So smoke is a major cause. Fire, there was some damage because of the fire, but smoke is your major cause of problems here. Some water damage. Again, some more give you indication of the smoke coming out by the lights, and then of course inside on the walls will have to be cleaned up and repainted. These drop ceiling tiles are all coming down. The lights are coming down on the left-hand side, on the right-hand side. The furniture that was able to be salvaged was taken out. It's been cleaned, sanitized, relocated from this site to go back in at some point in the To the left, there's a restroom, there's a locker room inside the restroom, but there was water damage, the ceiling was all ripped down, because the fire was right above the ceiling, so this was all torn out as part of the restroom. Again, some water damage to the ceiling tiles, and then the rest of the locker room, that this was not, the fire did not cause that to come down, the guys, it was torn
water
down.
damage.
Yeah, it was water damage and some smoke damage, so they took it down. This is the electrical
Oh,
room where the
my.
fire took place. It's back in the left-hand side. There's a picture indicating that we had some paper. Every day, there is a form that the bus drivers fill out indicating their route, their mileage, capacity, things like that, that PDE audits. So they were storing those down there. And fortunately, from what I am told by John Hearn, the Director of Transportation, we had just gone through an audit with many of the papers there, so that we probably will not need those because you can't read those anymore, obviously. Some other equipment to the right-hand side that was stored in there as well. You have some motor jacks, transmission jacks, things of that nature. There's off to the right-hand side, you will see a gas appliance that we're fortunate that the fire did not attack, which was the natural gas line feeding that hot water heater, which would have been potentially devastating. A little bit closer, you'll see on the left-hand side the point of origin of the fire, which is yet to be determined. We've had now a local fire marshal come in, a state fire marshal has come in, and then I've also had the insurance company bring in a fire forensic expert to come up with a cause as to what this was. They're still working through some theories. I'm not going to elaborate on that any further, but at some point they will come out with a determination. You can see on the right-hand side, these are the doors out of that room where the papers were thrown out by the fire company, obviously, as they're trying to put the fire out, because there was, the thing you don't see in there, there was a generator that was stored in there that had gasoline in it, and I think that helped contribute to the fire getting to the level that it was. In my opinion, not the fire marshals again. But again, they took out the papers and made sure that everything was out. Again, you're looking at the ceilings here, it's a little tough to tell. On the left-hand side, again, you're looking at the ceiling. We do have some steel that twisted, steel superstructure. The fire apparently got up to 900 to 1,000 degrees. It was estimated in the room, which again, if gasoline was part of that process as fuel, it makes sense that it got very warm in there. You'll see some insulation that's going to have to be replaced. Obviously, the lights have to be replaced on the right-hand side, as well as the conduits. So as we go through here, one of the things I've had the folks, our in-house forces do is we want to get the gas pumps up and running. They were not running that day. Fortunately, Haverford Township really, they have been nothing but helpful to us, allowing us to go down and fuel our buses and our trucks. We're going to make good on what we used, but it was very nice to know that it was just a call to them, and they were, sure, come on down. And it's nice, Laura Marion reached out to us as well as Upper Dublin School District, although Upper Dublin's a little far away. I know that the facilities operations director over there, he called and said, whatever we can do to help you. So it's nice that we do have other school districts that are willing to give us a hand in our time of need. So again, just to show you the ceiling up there with the lights, with the steel, a little bit of vent. This is a unit that we were putting in, ironically, just recently, and it's a backup generator panel, so that's going to have to be replaced. And as you see on the right-hand side of the water pipe, unfortunately that did not break, otherwise that would have been very nice to put the fire out. But that's probably will replace part of that too, because the copper might become thin wall because of the heat. Communications center on the right-hand side, and that's where the fire panel's off to the right in that picture. You see the communication panel for the phones as well as the cables for the network, and then off to the right there is where the communication lines came in, so all those will be replaced. Tomorrow I meet with the Byron was able to set up with the contractor who provides our fiber optics, and he's coming out tomorrow to start the process of running the fiber line into the building since that has since melted. So I hopefully have some, get that back up and running very soon as well. To the right-hand side is the window that the fire company had broke to clean out some of the smoke, and that's where the router's office was, and there was significant damage above that ceiling because of the way that wall backed up to the bathrooms in his office. You can see, I'll show you the right-hand side, we really very, very fortunate that there was 3 of our mechanics at the shop, as well as one of my maintenance guys happened to be down there. You can see the fire extinguishers on the ground. They made a valiant effort to try and put out the fire and quash it down while the fire company was on en route. So I really have to applaud them for what they were able to do. They helped save that building from further additional damage. On the left-hand side, you see the actual area where a lot of papers were thrown, so we still have to get that cleaned up. We had 2 buses inside bays. Now, they were not damaged except for smoke. They have since been cleaned and sanitized, and they ran through a HEPA system and ozone system to clean out the heating ducts, so that when those buses are reused again, there'll be no indication that they were ever having smoke damage in them. So what's happening now? We already made the alternative fueling range. We were able to restore the fueling station yesterday, so that was one of our key elements, is to get back and be able to pump our own fuel. We're setting up temporary office space and communications at the high school, at the faculty room. My hope is by the end of next week, we should be able to get those folks back into the transportation center temporarily. Yes.
No, go ahead.
We still have ongoing the fire marshal investigation. Again, he has not made a definitive determination. I'll be with him and the police detectives tomorrow afternoon. We've had a fire restoration company come in to do the cleanup, and of course the insurance adjuster has been out to do the inspection. Next steps, electrical restoration, which is ongoing. We'll have a series of electrical contractors in Monday morning. The conduits on the wall had wire in them. The conduits became so hot the wires actually melted and then shorted out the cables, so we have to replace all those conduits and all the wiring. Of course, that's part of the insurance claim that we'll be moving forward with. To reestablish the office and communications, develop a scope of work, put together bid documents, and then we'll have to put this out for bid, because we're looking at this at somewhere over $250,000 for the building, which will fall. I'm sure it's going to be above that. That's a preliminary number, but that falls above our bid threshold, so we have to put this out for bid as we do with any other project of that scope and size. Any other questions?
Yeah, I was there with you yesterday, right?
Yes.
Yeah, gosh, seems like a long time ago. Yeah, it's just amazing what the fire did. I mean, all the wires melting inside the condos. I was there, but Jim was trying to pull the wires through with the other 2 electricians. And I was there when they turned the pumps on. So when I was walking back to my car when the first bus pulled in, he was like, "Well, let's hope it works." And they were there, the 3 guys were like, "Hey, it works." So that was really cool. But we need to recognize those guys that used all the fire extinguishers. What, 10 fire extinguishers?
10 or 11.
Yeah, to recognize them for saving the building, because I mean, I told you the story about we financed a potato chip company in Maine and it caught on fire. The guys just let it burn because, well, it's not my job. They were out of a job for a couple of years. So that was.
We really need to recognize those folks.
Yeah, we need to recognize them, and we should also send a letter to Radnor Township, thanking them for stepping up and recognizing their office and telling their board that we appreciate that.
Yeah, no, the entire, from the superintendent down to the transportation, department have just been extremely supportive. I mean, immediately, which is really nice.
So thank you. I know that you guys were over there right away, and gosh, you called me and got within 30 minutes there was a letter out to the community that you guys pulled off a seamless afternoon bus pickup and delivery of kids was really remarkable. So thank you all for working so well together. All of you, thank you.
And you've been taking over for John.
John happened to be going on vacation, so he was told that he, since he prepaid that he was going to go, and not to worry, and so it's been a 4 o'clock morning for the past couple of days. Fortunately, John's back, so I can
Getting
sleep
him in shape
until
for the
5.
winter.
Huh?
We're getting him in shape for the soda.
Thanks.
What
Todd's in the back of the room going.
did we tell the kids? What did we tell the high school students about the start time? You don't need to practice being tired.
Yeah.
It doesn't require
the
practice.
fire was just really, it's kind of funny how funny it wasn't that big of an area, that big of a fire, but it's just devastated that whole building because there were no firewalls, because code back then was.
Right, there's no sprinkler in that building, there's no firewalls.
Oh, wait, we're putting a sprinkler system in, right?
I was just gonna ask, we were gonna
I'm
fix
sure
that
the
one
insurance-
first.
Something we will certainly do to mitigate things in the future, yes.
Should we also, these records, these transportation records we get audited, should we consider a fire safe for those to be stored in? Just
So,
We scan them in.
scan them, great,
Literally
whatever.
scan them in there, and also, we were looking at another computer program for routing, for work order systems and some scheduling. And they happen to have a module for transportation, and we're working with that company to see whether or not, if we want to go with them, whether or not they would actually be able to do that electronically, so we wouldn't have to ever worry about having paper to store
Yeah.
back
Move
there.
Radnor into the late 90s.
Okay.
So,
I just want
Kicking
to,
and screaming the whole thing.
I just want to echo, you know, what you said about, it really was the entire transportation department, the support from the district office, the drivers, our you know, operations department, maintenance department, seeing everybody chip in for a fire that started at 10:30, that shut down, 10:30 in the morning, that shut down that entire building, and then to have buses, as you said, run seamlessly, was pretty incredible.
Yeah,
So
that's
thank you for
absolutely.
mentioning that, and I really can't thank that team and everybody there who just worked really hard and were very flexible, and the high school was flexible. So we had all our drivers in the faculty dining. Byron and his team had a phone set up by maybe noon. Todd had, you know, arranged for somebody to be answering the phone. I mean, it was a great team effort, and it was seamless from the outside, which was great.
We were fortunate, we had the restoration company there before the last fire truck left. They responded in 20 minutes.
Wow.
So,
Gotta get the number from my house phones. All right, any new business from anyone? Public comment? See, good to sit there, or
Do you
do
want
we
him to
need?
sit up here?
right to-
Oh,
Yes, it won't. He can hear us there.
I've never been
Just
up
watch the cord.
there.
Careful.
Ah.
You've been coming to so many meetings, we just thought, you know, honorary.
Please raise your right hand. I know.
You've now
Am
sworn
I
in
on board?
every
Right.
Tuesday.
Your lights
uh,
on, okay.
So Tim Hengel, 462 Barclay, Radnor. And I'm really just very quickly here, mainly to follow up on our last meeting and to say thank you for a job halfway well done. Because we still got a long way to go, but it was a really proud moment, I think, for a lot of people in the room, and one that should, you know, we should definitely direct that to a lot of you who I think took great care to make sure we didn't run too fast and trip on ourselves, and got us to a point where I think everybody can sort of take the next leap with some confidence, and so you deserve quite a bit of credit for that. And I guess I came here today to hear, maybe to say, that the next step is critically to maintain our momentum, and, you know, in a room that was packed last month and is virtually empty this month, we have to be careful about that. And so I was pleased to hear, Mr. Brooks, your comments about the next steps and those things that are happening. And just to interject a couple thoughts along the way, because as you know, myself and my kids kind of initiated part of the conversation in this regard as it related to accessibility and those items. And so as you consider architects, I would encourage you to think about two things. One is experience in universal design on the site level. You know, so landscape architects and designers who have an experience in making things accessible for people. Many will profess to those kinds of skills. Many will have experience, and many will actually have the person who has that experience still on their staff. You know, picking at those details is going to be really important. And also, there remains a complicated programmatic project to oversee. And while you all can probably manage lots of projects, there are lots of projects for you to manage, and the architect or whomever is selected to do some of that design work will play a large role in maintaining the momentum. So their experience in herding the cats and taking a responsibility for that rather than doing what they're told to do only, I think is an important attribute that we should focus on as those are considered. So maybe just in time for me to come and say some of those things, because there are a lot of programmatic, aesthetic, functional things that will have to, you know, play each other off in tension, not to mention economics. And so those would be my comments today, and I'll see you next month. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you guys want to say anything? No?